Hello, it's Steve from UxbridgeFM with the September episode of the UxbridgeFM podcast. Coming up, we learn about the Uxbridge bunker, we chat to the Borough's museum curator, and there's poetry to take part in too. First off then, if you haven't been to the secret Uxbridge bunker, you really must go. Right, it's great to welcome Joe Hill to the studio, who is Military History Curator at the Battle of Britain bunker in Uxbridge. Hi Joe, how's it going?
Hi there, yeah, not too bad, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
For anybody who doesn't know, first of all, what is the bunker?
So the bunker was a top secret communications bunker from the Second World War that basically controlled all of the fighter aircraft that were flying above people's heads in the south of England and London. It was basically worked with the Dalloe system, which was the first ever integrated air defence network. So it's very, very crucial in actually turning the tide of the Battle of Britain in the RAF's favour.
And if you go there, you've got an underground bunker which is down and down and down, loads of stairs in the ground, built to withstand a bomb blast.
Yeah.
And then an amazing separate building with an exhibition in it.
Yes, so our visitor centre opened in 2018, so very modern, very fresh. Basically, in the visitor centre, we tell how the Dalloe system actually worked. And we also have some special exhibitions for the Polish Air Force. Obviously, the Poles have a real link to the Borough. Most of them flew from RAF Northolt in the Second World War, the ones that were obviously pilots, ground crew, etc. So we have a special exhibition for them downstairs. We also have just released our DEP 80 exhibition, which focuses on the 80th anniversary of Operation Jubilee, which took place on the 19th of August 1942. So we tell some stories from that period as well.
So when you go down into the bunker, you go down, there's a huge map on a table. And that's where the Wrens would have stood round and plotted where the planes were.
Yeah, so there were women from the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, the WAF. So 80% of personnel in the bunker were women during the Second World War. So they would have worked in pairs. One of them would have been a plotter. One of them would have been a teller, which means she's getting information through her headset.
Okay.
And she would be relaying that information to her colleague who would be plotting the blocks that you can see on the map. So it's an original map, which we protect with Perspex glass.
Oh, wow. And then on the wall, you've got these light systems that tells you the status of all the airfields.
Yeah.
And that still lights up as well, which is amazing.
Yes, so that was controlled by a couple of individuals that would sit in a little cubby hole in the operations room, which is called Ops B, Operations B. And there they would be using electronics to operate the lights. If, say, an aircraft was just getting ready, they would move it down. If it was getting into position, they would also move it further down the board as well.
And then the reason it was located in Uxbridge, obviously there was an active RAF base in Uxbridge, not now, it's all housing now, but there wasn't actually an airfield here, was there? That's the main reason it was located here.
Yeah, so there was obviously Hillingdon House, which was a big white building. If you go to the bunker, you'll be able to see it. It's a very grand building. Yeah. That was there, and that was the headquarters for Number 11 Group. However, actual RAF Uxbridge itself, it was more of a depot. If you were here in 1940, you would have seen a few wooden buildings, some huts. But if you were a German pilot flying over, you might not have thought it was anything special, so you probably wouldn't have dropped a bomb on it. And it was picked for that purpose, because basically if the communications room went down, then we'd have been in real trouble during the Battle of Britain.
And was it even secret to those who worked on the RAF base?
It was, yes. So people that worked down there weren't allowed to discuss what happened with their partners or their family. So yeah, it was hush-hush, top secret. Only people that needed to know about it would have known about it. The RAF police actually were situated in the bunker and they'd check everyone's passes before they went down.
Wow. And there's the famous Winston Churchill quote, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." The story goes that he spoke that at the bunker.
Yes, it was on the 16th of August, which was some of the hardest days fighting, a couple of days before the hardest day, actually, which was where Fighter Command suffered the most casualties it did at any point in the Battle of Britain. Churchill was in the bunker. As he was walking up the steps, he turned to his military advisor, Hastings Ismay, and he said to him, he bellowed at him, he said, "Don't talk to me, I've never been so moved," because he realised what was happening in the bunker was having a very profound effect. on the course of the Second World War. And as they were pulling out in their staff car of RAF Uxbridge, and this is when he said to him that never in the field of human conflict has so much been owed by so many to so few. Obviously the words that he repeated in Parliament that have become synonymous with the Battle of Britain. Of course, by the few, he meant the individuals that were flying in the Battle of Britain.
And at some points in the battle, it was really down to the wire, wasn't it? We were really running out of planes and resources.
Absolutely. I mean, 82 years ago today, 31st of August, was a very, very tough day. The day before, Biggin Hill had been flattened, had to transfer all of its communications to RAF Hornchurch. The Poles entered the war today, 82 years ago. 303 Squadron were finally made operational, and they did help turn the tide of the war. They became the highest scoring squadron in the Battle of Britain, and they were only in it for about half the time as everybody else, so they were very talented pilots. Yeah, it was very tough at this point in August for Fighter Command, but of course the famous fatal error that Hitler made, turning his attention onto London, which gave RAF Fighter Command a little bit of a respite on their airfields. And so yeah, could talk about that for hours and hours, but yeah.
And you've brought some information on some local people who were based in the area. Who's the first person you've got information about?
So I'm going to talk about three individuals. I've tried to represent quite a diverse group. So I want to talk a bit about Betty Giles. So she was a member of the Women's Auxiliary Air Force during the Second World War, and she was actually based in the bunker from 1940 to 1945. So she had a lot of time down there, and then after the war she actually stayed in Uxbridge. Her photo is also displayed in the Visitor Centre's exhibition, as is an image of her name, and we hold items which kind of show her life as a member of the WAF working at RAF Uxbridge, such as a photograph from the set of The First of the Few in 1942. The film was actually shot at Denham Studios, and Betty features as an extra in the film, among other plotters that worked in the bunker. The director, Leslie Howard, famous director, actually signed the photo for Betty, so it's one of our really interesting documents that we have on display. Her time at the bunker also stretches beyond its walls. Many of the road names in the St Andrews development were named after individuals from RAF Uxbridge's history, and Betty is the influence for Giles Crescent. So if anyone lives in Giles Crescent, that's named after Betty Giles. And as I said to you already, she worked in the bunker for 5 years, so basically spanned most of the Second World War. And then following the war, she remained in the local area, having married in 1945, and she lived in Denham. And she also served on the committee of Uxbridge History Society until her death in 2002.
And was she allowed to speak about things that went on after the war, or would she still be signed to the Official Secrets Act or something?
I think after the war it became easier for them to kind of talk about what happened. Actually, I spoke to another WAF veteran who was actually at our exhibition launch, Helen Mills. She was in the bunker on D-Day, and she was able to talk a little bit about what happened, but obviously a long time ago now, so memories might not be as fresh.
That's interesting. Who's the next person that comes into play?
So I want to talk a bit about Franciszek Korniski. He was the last surviving Polish fighter squadron commander from the Second World War, and he was born in 1916 in Poland, graduated from their Air Force Academy just a few months before the outbreak of war. He was then forced to flee through Romania and then France, and after France's capitulation he escaped back to the UK, and after training he was posted to 303 Squadron in October 1940, who at the time were resting after a gruelling 6 weeks at RAF Northolt, flying against the Luftwaffe during the Battle of Britain. After a long period of service with 315 Squadron, who were also based at RAF Northolt, he later held command of 2 Polish squadrons. He stayed in the RAF and eventually was promoted to the rank of squadron leader and retired in 1972. Obviously, due to the political situation, he was unable to return to Poland after the war. He settled in the UK and lived in Ealing, which was obviously a neighbouring borough, where he married and had 2 sons. He died just short of his 101st birthday, but shortly before he died, he was reunited with a Spitfire that he flew in 1942 at RAF Northolt. So yeah, another really interesting individual there.
And finally...
So this is Air Vice Marshal Keith Park, who you might have heard of. He was the commander of Number 11 Group during the Battle of Britain. He had quite an interesting life. He was from New Zealand, but he'd fought in the First World War as a distinguished fighter pilot and then rose his way up the RAF in the interwar period. And he was given the job of commanding Number 11 Group, which was a very coveted role because Number 11 Group were the busiest out of all of the groups of fighter command. because they protected London and the southeast. So most of the Luftwaffe raids during the Battle of Britain would have come in over Dover, over those areas, so we'd have needed to react in the bunker. He became known as a defender of London due to his exploits, working very closely with Dowding in the bunker and at Hillingdon House, protecting the country, obviously, from the Luftwaffe. He was actually replaced after the battle, but he did more crucial work in Malta, implementing some of the same successful tactics that helped win the Battle of Britain. He actually interestingly lived in a staff house which was attached to RAF Uxbridge. So we always say in our tours that he had one of the best commutes in the whole of London. So you can still see his original green door, which leads to his official residency. Oh. So that's part of the old wall that survived from RAF Uxbridge. He also used to wear this iconic white suit, and he had his own personal Hurricane that he'd fly. And finally, just to add that his statue is proudly in the car park at the museum. It used to be on I think it was the 5th plinth at Trafalgar Square, but they moved it to the bunker when we opened in 2018.
So day to day, what do you find yourself doing at the bunker? Are you there full time, giving talks and things, or how are you involved?
Yeah, so as the military history curator, we have a very small team. There's only 2 of us. We basically look after the collections, deliver exhibitions like we have done recently with the Dieppe raid. I do also do tours, so we'll take members of the public down into the bunker. And also, if I have to give specific specialist talks, I can do that as well. So yeah, it's a very, very, very good job. It keeps me on my toes. We have a large backlog of collections that we need to sift through, so I think I'll probably be busy for the next 80 years.
Yes. I suppose people are giving you things all the time, are they? They're finding things in their lofts or...
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
I mean, if it meets the criteria of being associated to the Battle of Britain or RAF Uxbridge, we would usually, we would take those collections on. Mm.
So we've got the bunker and the museum, and there's also some other rooms to hire, aren't there? Some lecture theatres and rooms.
Yeah, so I believe our briefing room and the large meeting room that we have in the visitor centre, which is really picturesque, actually. If you look out, you can see some of the aircraft that we have on display. I think that's available for private corporate hire. Actually, we do have a few events running. Obviously, things are picking up more after COVID. So, yeah, we do have spaces that can be hired by local businesses or other companies.
And can you go down in the bunker as a sort of corporate event? That would be quite cool.
I think we do run sort of tours around those sort of events. Yeah. So, for example, we have quite a lot of individuals that come from the Defence Academy. We have members of the Royal Air Force that come as well. So we do have large groups. We can cater for large groups and private tours as well. And
price-wise, well, it depends. If you're a Hillingdon First card holder, you get... half price entry, which is great. Normally it's £9 for the visitor centre and the bunker.
Yes.
But if you're Hillingdon First card holder, you get that for half price. Under 16s are free.
Yes.
So that's great, isn't it?
And over 65s pay a discounted price, I believe, as well.
Yeah. And the cafe, I've been there once or twice. Nice cake in the cafe.
Yeah. I mean, when I forget my lunch, I'm all about the jacket potato. And it's a very good cafe. Yeah, very nice cakes, good coffee. Very popular actually with dog walkers and local people. And
of course, because the park's actually quite picturesque nearby, isn't it?
Yes,
walking through.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's quite a nice walk from Uxbridge across the park to the bunker. Well, thanks, Joe, for popping in and telling us a little bit about the bunker and 3 local people. You have to pop back another time and tell us more about other things that are going on. That would be great.
Absolutely, yeah. More than happy to do that, yeah.
Thanks again. Cheers. Well, we're really blessed in Hillingdon to have access to a number of historic sites. Let's find out what's coming up at a few of them. Susan Dalloe is here. Hello, Susan.
Hello there.
And you're the Borough Curator for Hillingdon.
Yes, that's right.
Which means it's quite a wide area you cover, isn't it?
Oh, yes. It's the whole of the borough, looking after the collections, the museum collections, the archive collections, and various sites from Eastcote House in the north to Cranford Park in the south, and all areas in between.
And lots of things coming up for autumn on the events list. Can you run us through perhaps a few things that are happening?
Yes, certainly. Thursday the 6th and Thursday the 13th of October, we have mindfulness at Eastcote House Gardens. So Abvhani will be taking a group for about an hour and a half, and you can enjoy the grounds there and look at the grounds in a very different way, a relaxation way. Sunday the 9th of October, we have Apple Day at Cranford Park, and you'll have the opportunity to look at the orchard, pick some apples, and then take them to be juiced using a scratting machine, and then you'll be able to taste the juice you make as well.
Oh, great.
Sunday the 23rd of October, we have an event called Spooky at Cranford Park. And this is a family event. Again, you'll be able to explore the woodlands of Cranford Park as a group and learn a few of the ghostly stories surrounding Cranford Park.
Cranford Park, of course, has got its big lottery fund and some changes happening there, aren't there, in the next few months?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, the big thing is that there'll be a new cafe which will be on the site of the original house, and the cellars underneath the cafe where you'll be able to learn much more about the people and the animals of Cranford Park. The cafe will be selling teas, coffees, ice creams, that sort of thing. And there'll be a play area behind there for children up to the ages of about 16 that will tell some of the stories, again, of the park.
That'd be excellent. At the moment, it's quite, I wouldn't say derelict, but it needs some work, doesn't it, at the moment?
Absolutely, yes. And we were extremely pleased to have the Heritage Lottery Fund support the project.
Yeah.
The stables there, they are going to be restored, and you'll be able to go in there, find out more about the horses, the stablemen, the ostlers, and the owners of the house. And you'll also be able to go on an audio-guided trail round the ancient woodlands, find out more about the animals, the trees, the red kites, all the birds, kingfishers.
So carrying on through the diary, beyond the 23rd of October, more events for our diary?
Yes, absolutely. Friday the 28th of October, we have an event called Medieval Codes, which is at Manor Farm Library. And you'll be able to come along, learn about medieval writing, and it's basically decoding the past. And you'll learn about how you can do that. Saturday the 5th of November, we're going to have a lantern trail at Manor Farm, and you'll be able to create your own lanterns and then go round the grounds once they're all lit up with your lanterns.
That'll look great, won't it?
Yeah, it's an ideal site for that. Manor Farm has had human occupation since prehistoric period, and there's been several owners. And as some of you may know, there's a 13th century great barn there, one of the largest in the whole of Greater London.
And these events are all on the website, of course, as well.
Yes, they are.
And talking of the website, you've got some stories on there that you wanted to point out to people as well.
Yes, that's right. The website is www.hillingdon.gov.uk/history. And you'll see a button that says Hillingdon Stories, and you'll find out about people and places of Hillingdon, including people like the hermit Roger Crabb from Ickenham, who actually lived up a tree in Ickenham at part of his life.
Right.
There's also virtual tours around some of the sites of the borough. You find out about nature at Cranford Park, find out more about Eastcote House Gardens and how many houses there were on those sites. There's something more recent about the first wave of COVID. And there's also our temporary exhibitions. Those are online as well.
Lots of stuff online. Going to check out. Roger Crabb sounds interesting. I have to check him out.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, you've handed me a poster here about Back to the 1980s.
Yes, that exhibition's going to be next year throughout 2023 on level 6 at Uxbridge Library. And we're really, really interested to hear your stories of life in the borough in the 1980s. What did you do? Where did you go? Have you got any objects that you bought in the 1980s from local stores, or objects that absolutely epitomise Hillingdon in the 1980s? Did you get in the exercise craze? Did you go to Woolworths? What did you buy? What do you remember from the 1980s? We've been looking through our newspapers, and we're going to put newspaper stories about the borough. We've got photographs, but we're really, really seriously interested in hearing your stories.
Yeah, because for me, that was the sort of birth of computer games, wasn't it? I remember we had a very early TV tennis, and then Pac-Man, and some of the fashion. Yes, we won't talk about that. The luminous socks.
Absolutely.
And the leg warmers.
Yeah, leg warmers. I had some bright pink ones and bright orange ones myself.
I don't know what those things were that you wore on your head, those little springs with balls on the end. I don't know what that was called, but
yes.
Boinging around. Very odd.
Maxi dresses, and there were the new romantics as well. And
yeah, it was quite a variety of things, wasn't it, in the 80s?
Very
and
definitely.
Food as well, yeah.
So that's the exhibition for 2023. Coming up exhibition in Uxbridge Library is from the 14th of October to the 11th of November, and it's called Discovery. It's an archaeological exhibition, and it's actually based on the fact that 26th of November 1922 was when Howard Carter discovered Tutankhamun's tombs.
Okay.
We don't have Tutankhamun's tomb in Hillingdon, unfortunately, but we do have finds going back to the prehistoric period. We have mammoth tusks. We have finds from Pinchester Moat, which is medieval, at Ickenham. We have flint tools, we have microliths. If you live near a river, that will be a site that prehistoric man probably visited. So please come and see the exhibition.
There's hundreds and hundreds of things that are hidden away in archives that we never see, that the museum service has. Have you got any favourites that you like to pull out and have a look at?
Oh, that's very difficult. Yes, when we go around the stores, we have a lot of framed works of art that are by local artists. And actually, online, we've got Hillingdon in art, so you can see that. We have a small police collection, so we've got a wooden police truncheon that actually has Uxbridge written on it.
Oh, wow.
And we have some Victorian dolls, which actually at the moment they're on display on level 6 at Uxbridge Library. We have all sorts of things. It's difficult to say because we have a lot of photographs which are in the paper archive. We have newspapers as well as online newspapers because we are collecting digital archives now as well. Believe it or not, we have 5 tractors in the museum collections.
Okay.
3 of those are World War II tractors. And we hope that we'll be able to put some of those on display in the future as well. So, as I say, it's very difficult to say. We do have quite a large collection, and we are trying to show more of it across the borough. We have a good relationship with Botwell Green Library and some of the other libraries across the borough, and we want to get more objects out into the cases. With the Discovery exhibition, we do have 2 talks. One's called Hillingdon's Prehistoric Past, which is Monday the 17th of October, and Excavations at Cranford Park, which is Thursday the 10th of November. Anything you want to book or anything that you're interested in hearing more about, please get in touch with us at archives@hillingdon.gov.uk.
That's great. Well, thanks for popping in, Susan, and telling us a bit about the archives and your job as a borough curator. It's quite a varied job, I would imagine, isn't it?
Yes, incredibly varied, very interesting. I mean, there's so many stories across Hillingdon as a borough. I want to know more and more.
Exciting stuff. Next up on the podcast, do you fancy yourself as a bit of a secret poet? We're going to find out about haiku. Right, joining us again is Nevina Abvhani, almost our resident poet, I think, here on Uxbridge FM. Now, just in case anyone listening hasn't heard you before, could you just summarise how you got into poetry and how it's helped you with your health issues?
Yeah, good morning, Steve. I got into poetry as a result of my illness. I used to be a fitness instructor and a nutritionist, and I had my own business. As a result of rare nerve disease, which is a form of a rare cancer which damages your nerves, and gradually over time I became more disabled, and now I'm in a wheelchair, unable to use my limbs as well as I could. I found that in life I had no purpose left, and I was building up a lot of internal feelings, anger, not really going in any direction. I'd seen a lot of therapists and so on, and it wasn't until I came across a simple poem that struck my mind, and I thought, wow, that's exactly how I feel. And from there on, my interest developed, and I found a way of expressing myself, and then from there on my interest took on, and that's kind of been almost 8 years ago now. But I've built up quite a lot of knowledge, and I like all kinds of poetry now, and that ranges from the simplest form to poetry about injustice, poetry about just appreciating nature. So it's kind of, opened up a whole new area, but it's given me a purpose in life. And without that, I feel if I had all these feelings and expressions that I wouldn't have been able to relate out, I would have built up a lot more illnesses, because at the end of the day, you have to express yourself. If you're building all that up, you're leading to more health problems. So the more you can express, the more you can get out, the more you can build upon your life. And this kind of affects a whole range of people, regardless of whether you're disabled, whatever state you're in, whether you're lonely. It applies to anyone really now.
And today we're going to look at a simple form of poetry that I, to be honest, forgotten about. It's a Japanese form of poetry called haiku. Can you explain how that works and how that's built up?
Yes, so today we're looking at haiku. We talked about looking at simple forms of poetry, and haiku is a very simple form of poetry. It's one where a poem consists of only 3 simple lines, nothing else. There's no rhyming involved, nothing like the usual poems we've discussed in the last podcast, just 3 simple lines. And each of the lines are short with few words. And I'm going to come back onto that just to explain. But I'm going to go back to a little bit of history about haiku. So it's a traditional form of Japanese poetry from the 9th century. It's very well liked in Japan, but it's becoming very popular in the West because of its simplicity and brevity, and it has the power to relay thoughts and our emotions. And that's the key thing about haiku. It's very simple and has the power to relay our thoughts or emotions. So we talked about these very 3 simple lines with no rhyming, so we don't have to worry about rhyming. Each of the lines are short with few words. The only rule is the first and the third line should contain 5 syllables, and the second line should contain 7 syllables. So the focus is more on the syllables and not on the words. The only other rule is that one of the lines ought to have a double meaning or a philosophical meaning. In Japanese, this is called keriji, which means a statement which is cutting. Haiku poems are usually based around nature, seasons, moods, and emotions. Now, I'm not going to bore you going through more and more about haiku. I want to talk to you about examples so we can relate to it. I will read one at first and then we can go through it line by line. So this first example is called Uncertain. What do I do now? I am the last leaf on the tree, weaving in the breeze. I'll repeat that. What do I do now? I am the last leaf on the tree, weaving in the breeze. So the poem is about a leaf on a tree, not knowing what to do in the breeze. The double or philosophical meaning may be that you are the last one remaining, set in a family or a group of friends or street, and you're just uncertain about life and how it will be. So that's the profound feeling expressed. Now I'm just going to take you through. If we look at line 1, what do I do now? Each word is 1 syllable. So we have 5 syllables there. The second line, I am last leaf on the tree. That's 7 syllables. And the third one, weaving in the breeze. So I think you should be getting an idea by now as to what we're aiming for. As you can see, haiku is simple and fun. And some people don't even worry about the number of syllables. It's just an experiment just to enjoy yourself. At this stage, I'd like us to try one together, Steve. And I'd like to try and think about September. It's the new season. There's lots of changes occurring in our lives at the moment. So the first thing that we always think about when we do haiku is we jot down the words that come to our mind when we think of September. Try and connect to your senses and your emotions. Think of sight, smell, touch, taste, and emotions that go with September. So let's try and jot down some words and then we'll look at what we've come up with to build a haiku. Perhaps, Steve, you can think about some words that come to your mind.
Yeah, I've written down autumn, school, coats, new term, chilly, and leaves.
Wonderful, that's wonderful. There's a lot to build on that because it's the beginning of autumn, the weather's changing, chilly, the new term. So there's a lot you can build onto it and work through. That's an exercise for you to work through, I think, yeah. The words that I came up with were new beginnings, in the same way that you probably did, shorter days, darker nights, golden colours, leaves falling, homemade pies. And if I was to put mine together, I think I would suggest that we would choose the words that appeal to us and put them together with 5 or 7 syllables. So in my case, and I'm cheating here because I did this earlier, we wouldn't have the time to go through this. I did this one earlier, so I came up with Sweet September Begins. Shorter days, darker, cold nights. Homemade blackberry pies. And I'll just read that again. Sweet September begins. Shorter days, darker, cold nights. Homemade blackberry pies. We have a double meaning here. September can be sweet, but it can also be bittersweet, giving the impression that we're hunkering down now that summer's gone. If you want to try and put just one line together, Steve, or perhaps you want to leave it for the next time when we get together.
I think yours would be quite similar to mine in that you reminded me about apple and blackberry pies being made. That's fantastic. I need 5 syllables to start with. So let's pick school coats, chilly, leaves. School coats, chilly leaves.
So you might even be able to expand on that and use it for a second line.
I think what I'll do, as you say, is write one for next time and we can review it when we join us next month.
Because it would be good also for our listeners to feed in next time. But it's something to take away for next time so we can work on it. What I'll do is I'll read a couple of other September ones just to give people some inspiration and ideas. So this next one is called Possibilities. You can give it a title. I just haven't gone through the full details yet. That's for next time. Now it's September. Possibility laden. Seize it and hold on. Now it's September. Possibility laden. Seize it and hold on. So we're referring to September as a month of possibility and new starts. The next one that we have for September this is a very different view now to September. September cast, dying. Loss of summer bloom's death. Nothing immortal. September cast, dying. Loss of summer bloom's death. Nothing immortal. So this reminds us, with everything falling down as the month of September comes, we lose the leaves, things start disappearing, but also with a double-edged meaning that we humans are not immortal. Now, I just wanted to take a little bit of time. I think we're all going through a lot as a nation. We are all mourning in some way or other with the passing of the Queen. And so I thought we could express our feelings in a haiku and pay tribute. I've written a few simple ones. The first one here is My Queen. My dignified Queen, all my life you were there. What am I to do now? My dignified Queen, all my life you were there. What am I to do now? Of course, here the meaning is that we are lost. For most of us, the Queen has been a part of our life. As children, we've seen her as a wonderful queen, pretty, just as we would imagine her throughout our lives. And we feel a loss, a sense of loss. We don't know how to express that. And it's very important that we do express that, as we talked about it earlier, rather than building it in whatever form that we can. The next one is called Rest. Beautiful your smile. Comforted I was in you. Rest, rest, my queen. Beautiful your smile. Comforted I was in you. Rest, rest, my queen. Begs the question of how I will be comforted now. So I would really like our listeners to give this a go and to send any so we can review at the next podcast. In the Western world, the focus has changed now, and what used to be traditional haiku in the form of 575 has been changed to anything that works with 3 lines. So people have started changing it to 3, 5, 3, or whatever it is I can find. It has to have the second line longer than the first 2, but to whatever it is that works for them. It doesn't now maintain the strict rules that it used to. In Japan, these small poems that we've just been going through were originally verses in large poems running for pages and pages. Ultimately, a movement called the haiku movement broke away from it, creating the verses that we've now been working on. And I'm just going to finally finish up with a few more readings, just to give you some more inspiration. One that really touched me was this one, which is Mum's Hearts. Mum's hearts burst daily. Love, fear, hope, angst, joy, weary, silent explosions. Another one that I'm going to read out is about love and winter, effectively. Love is like winter, warm breaths thaw cold hearts until one day the spring comes. So I hope that's given you all an idea of how haiku works, a background to the history of haiku, and also allowed you all to pay some respect or tribute to what we're going through as a nation. Again, it's been a real pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed this introduction, and I look forward to reading the haikus that you all developed and taking it to the next stage. If you have any requests for any other kinds of poetry, please do let Steve know. Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thanks, Nevina. If you want to send your haikus in, could be anything. I mean, September is our theme, but you could write a haiku on Uxbridge if you wanted to, I suppose. So 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and then 5 syllables. You can send them via email or share them on our Facebook page. Once again, Nevina, thanks for joining us for a bit of poetry lessons today.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's been a pleasure again.
Right, let's take a look at our events listings around Uxbridge. A couple of events coming up. We've got comedy at the Crown and Treaty on Wednesday, October the 5th from 8 p.m. Check out crownandtreaty.com. And the Comedy Bunker at Uxbridge Golf Club has 2 shows in October on the 7th and the 21st. Check out comedybunker.co.uk. You've also got Rock for Heroes at the Beck Theatre on Wednesday the 5th of October. Do join us on social media, just search Uxbridge FM. And thanks to Chris Allen for helping out and Luca Nieri for the music. I'll catch you next month.